ॐ शन्नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शन्नो भवद्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्तिः 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 सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 यश्छन्दसां वृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया आस्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासं शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवं ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्तिः 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 अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिव कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणगुंसवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इति त्रिशङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम् ॐ शान्तिः 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 पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः आप्यायन्तु मम अङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्यां मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्तिः 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 वाङ् मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्म एधि वेदस्य म आनीस्थः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनातितेन अहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्तिः 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 भद्रं नो अपि वातय मनः ॐ शान्तिः 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 भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Yo brahmanam vidadhati purvam Yo vai vedamscha prahinoti tasmai Tagumha devamatma buddhi prakasham Mumukshurvai sharanamaham prapadye Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpada Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Narayanam Padma Bhuvam Vasishtam Shaktim Cha Tatputra Parasharam Cha Vyasam Shukam Gaudapadam Mahantam Govinda Yogindra Mathasya Shishyam Shri Shankaracharya Mathasya Padma Padam Cha Hastamalakam Cha Shishyam Tam Totakam Vartikakaram Anyanasmat Gurun Santatamanatosmi. Om Vishwam Darpanadichyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantargatam Pashyanat Manimayaya Bahiribhut Bhutam Yatha Nidraya Yat Sakshat Karanat Yat Sakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanamevadvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Bijasyantarivānkuro Jagadidam Prang Nirvikalpam Punaha Maya Kalpita Desha Kala Kalana Vaichitriya Chitri Kritam Maya Viva Vijrambhayatyapi Maha Yogi Vayasvechaya Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Yasyaiva Spuranam Sadatmakam Asatkalparthakam Bhasate Sakshat Tattvamasiti Veda Vachasa Yo Bodhayatyashritan Yat Sakshat Karanat Bhavena Punaravrittir Bhavambo Nidhau Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Nana Chidraghatodara Sthita Mahadipa Prabhabhaswaram Jnanam Yasya Tu Chakshuradhikarana Dvara Bahispandate Janamiti Tameva Bhantamanubhatye Tatsamastam Jagat Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Deham Pranamapindriyanapi Chalam Buddhim Cha Shunyam Viduhu Stri Baland Jadopamastwamiti Bhranta Bhrisham Vadinaha Maya Shakti Vilasa Kalpita Maha Vyamoha Samharine Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye. So as I mentioned, I think we will do the chanting just this way, where we will break in the Dakshinamurti Stotram into two parts. First 5 at the beginning of the class, and the last 5 at the end of the class. This is what is done by tradition in thousands of years, so we'll just follow that tradition. Okay. So, what we had been starting to look at in the last class was, what is Brahma Sutra all about? What is it meant to do? What's the objective, and what do we get out of it? This is the discussion. So it's an interesting thing because this is often asked. Sometimes when I start a new class, students ask me, what is the new text all about? Can you tell us, before they have to make a decision whether they should join this class or not? So what is it all about? And we used to do the same thing. It's not as though it is something peculiar to the modern. From the very beginning, we had exactly the same thing. When Swamiji will start something, we will say, why? Well, in the case of our 2.5-year course, there was a prescribed syllabus. And so we didn't ask this question very much as to why this, because we knew that there was a prescribed order for the syllabus and we just followed it. But I think if we don't have a prescribed syllabus, we just start a new one, just like I do. We did this, we did Taittiriya, we did Mandukya, and then we do this, the Dikdishya Viveka. People always ask, why this text? The answer to that is, it is just Vedanta. It is just Vedanta. Vedanta means that really all of them have exactly the same objective. Well, if all of them have the same objective and I just finished one text, why another one? Because our minds are not yet convinced about what we want to see. We want to see total freedom, and I don't have total freedom today. My experiences don't give me that total freedom, and so I'm still looking. So really all of the texts in Vedanta are supporting your mind's ability to convince yourself that this makes sense. This is what it's all about. This is also presented in the form of kripa. Kripa meaning blessings. And so there is Ishvara kripa, there is Shastra kripa, there is Guru kripa, and then there is Atma kripa. So Atma kripa means the kripa of your own mind which says yes. Otherwise the mind has a folded hands and it says, well, I've studied this and I've studied that, but I don't know. This is the not Atma kripa. Your mind is in that manner reasonable and very rational. It's not going to accept something that it doesn't understand. It doesn't accept it. It can provisionally accept it, but not really. So the Atma Kripa is the most important one. And so all the texts, whatever they do, is to give you adequate samagri, adequate data, adequate fodder for you to understand yourself. This is exactly what needs. Otherwise, if somebody can give you, just a blessing, okay, you're done. If you look at the Bhagavad Gita, this is a beautiful example. So I think we have talked about this, that Arjuna and Krishna had known each other for a number of years. And Arjuna was very devoted to Krishna as a king, because Krishna was also a king. And a very wise king, full of wisdom. So Arjuna was very devoted to Krishna. And Krishna was also very fond of Arjuna as a very important and wonderful person. So when Arjuna had a problem in life, where he had a nervous breakdown, wouldn't it have been better for Krishna, who is really nothing but an avatara of Ishvara? He's really nothing but Ishvara himself. Couldn't it have been easy for him to say, okay, my son, my friend, I bless you, close your eyes, and you're done. He could have done that. He couldn't do it. That's not the issue. We have the Ishvara Kripa, but until we have Atma Kripa, therefore the Krishna had to really teach him. Says Arjuna, you don't understand. Your nervous breakdown is not really true to yourself. You're just hiding your truth in terms of some emotional problems. Please understand. And Arjuna said, I don't know. Arjuna also just wanted to say that you can just give it to me. I'm giving it to you, but then you have to accept it. Anyway, I'm just going on, but the idea of starting a new text like Brahma Sutra is, what does it do for me? It's all Vedanta, giving you more samagri, more fodder, in a way some more wood particles for you to burn the darkness of your own mind. This is what it is. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean that all of the texts are exactly the same. They look at different aspects of it and so on, even though the Tatparya is the same as we mentioned last time. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivoho Brahmana Aparaha. We saw that as the central theme, the Tatparya. Even though the Tatparya is the same, the texts do have different ways of presenting the same Tatparya. So what is it about Brahma Sutra? So we had started looking into it. I had mentioned it to you that the Brahma Sutra, written by none other than Vyasacharya, who is the avatara of Vishnu, to say there are lots of different textbooks, lots of different aspects of teaching of Vedanta and Vedas, Vedanta, all of them are there. But here is a comprehensive summary of all the things that are being said in various texts. This is the essence of it. These are the various, Swami Dayananji had said, is the spiritual Supreme Court. So there are lots of arguments about should we have abortion or not, Roe versus Wade in the US, and should abortion. So there's lots of different arguments that are given, that the woman has an independent, she is the master of her body, she should decide what to do with it. And then, so this is kind of like an internal kind of a thing. And then the external thing is, no, this is killing. You are, and so this is not dharmic, this is not part of dharma. So all these arguments are given, and the Supreme Court has to specify exactly what is, sorting through the various arguments, it has to say this is exactly what needs to be done. Now we all know that the Supreme Court itself, at least in the US and elsewhere as well, in India and Europe and so on, is not perfect, because the people also have certain viewpoints, conservative, liberal, they also have problems and so on. And so they cannot give you the absolute, unbiased view. It's not possible. But in the case of spiritual Supreme Court, in a way, this is Ishvara's resolution to the various doubts that people have. And because what is being said in Vedanta is literally unbelievable. Unbelievable. That, my goodness, you take yourself to be just an ordinary, limited, problem-infested human being? You are not. In fact, you are completely independent and the master of the whole world. This is not acceptable. I have a hard time, no matter how much Shraddha I have. I want to believe it, but I don't know, this doesn't sound... So we have lots of issues that we have to resolve. And so, to give you the Atma Kripa, there is a lot of energy spent in summarizing, in resolving, supporting, giving you arguments, and so on. So here, our acharyas have said that my mistake about who I consider myself to be and what I consider the world to be really has two parts to it. Right? You can be looked at in different ways, but in this argument there are two segments to it. One segment is just what you think about it yourself. And this is very clear that we go about our lives as though I'm just a human being. There's nothing more than that. Okay? And everybody else's experiences also it supports that. You ask somebody else, isn't that your experience? So they say, yes, it's my experience too. And so we all say, okay, that's it. We're all just simple human beings, just going through life. Don't like it, all of it, but what can you do? Do the best we can. You know, what cannot be cured must be endured. That kind of a attitude. So this is one thing where you're not really, other than consulting with your friends and neighbors and so on, you're not looking for any philosophical background to this. You feel that I am a limited person. This is one type of doubt. The other type of doubt is where a person can say, you know, this is what I think, but I want to know what the scholars think. So and this is exactly what happens to us as we go through college, and especially when we leave home. When we leave home and we are no longer under the influence of what our parents are doing. And in my case, this was a blessing. I tell you, my life has been chartered, has been designed specifically by Ishwar. I feel like he's my best friend. And one of the best things that happened was that I got out of the influence of my parents and my family and my friends in India. Why do I say that? It's not as though they're bad people. They're all excellent people. But they did not pursue the truth to the degree that I was able to once I left them. To coming to the US, I became an independent thinker. I mean, I started to explore, including my own, others, and so on. And so when you start looking for others' wisdom to support your view, it is very possible that the mistake can be compounded if you follow the wrong people. Wrong people also don't have something on their forehead which says this is wrong. They are very convincing. And if you and I are just ordinary people, we feel this is good enough. I'm just going to follow it. Anyway, those are the two things that I just said, that there are two doubts that a person can have. One is your own independent wrong thinking, and the other one is the wrong thinking on when you actually follow some very sharp, intelligent, and persuading people in the world. These are the two things. Anyway, with that, let us now go into the specific reason why Vyasacharya composed the Brahma Sutra, and we had already started doing it in the last week, but let me complete it. So there are three reasons what has prompted the existence of Brahma Sutra. There are three reasons. One is, so these are the segments of a spiritual Supreme Court, as I mentioned before. So the first one which we covered last week is that Vyasacharya wanted to consolidate the various aspects of Vedanta that are given in the various Upanishads in one place. And so this is an excellent summary of Vedanta. And the summary has to be done in a manner where you refer to it. See, so there's a difference. It's not the explanation of the various Upanishads. Otherwise the Upanishad will not be needed. So the Upanishads are needed. In fact, the Vidya comes from the Upanishads. But in terms of its importance, its completeness, its effectiveness, they have to be referenced. This is what. So for example, just look at it. Let's take Taittiriya Upanishad. The Taittiriya Upanishad specializes in Panchakosha Viveka. So first you have Annamaya Kosha, then you have Pranamaya Kosha, then you have Manomaya Kosha, then you have Vijnanamaya Kosha, then you have Anandamaya Kosha. So this is a kind of like a step by step. You cannot jump. Swami Paramarthananda said, supposing a person has to go from the ground floor up to the stage, which is like 4 feet high. You cannot do that easily unless you are an athlete. So you have to have some steps to go up. So all of a sudden to go from I am just this much, because this is my experience, I can touch myself, that this is who I am. And you are told you are not just this skin and bones or anything. You are the very conscious being which envelops the whole world. I can't do that in one step. It's difficult for my mind. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. Anandam brahmano vidwan na bibheti kadachaneti. You cannot do that in one step. And so the Taittiriya Upanishad actually gives you a very gradual way of understanding. So if you look at Bhrigu, he went to his father and said, how do I understand that I am Brahman? So this is what is called tapas. So tapas means that his teacher told him, you just meditate on one thing. All annam is Brahma. All food is Brahma. Because food is something that a person can visualize, can see, we live by it. He says you just do the upasana that the annam brahmeti. So Bhrigu went and just closed his eyes and he was given instructions. He says, listen, please see, please understand that all living beings comes from food. Food is the one that has made you be born. And food is the one that sustains you. It is your very content. And food is the one that you will disappear into. As we know, if a person is, whether you bury a person or you cremate a person, all the elements go back. So he says that see that the very source, the very sustenance and very end of all living beings is nothing but annam. Just meditate on that. So Bhrigu also meditated on it and said, yes, this is true. But, and his father Varuna was expecting this but, he says, so, why are you back? He says, sir, I have a doubt. I agree that annam is the very basis of all all life. I agree with you, and annam is very superior. This is why in India, in our culture, we respect food very much. We do not try as much as possible not to throw away food. This was true of all our bringing up. Our parents will only give us only this much that we can eat and not leave anything. So the respect for annam comes from this, that annam is Brahman. Then Bhrigu comes back and said, "Sir, I have a doubt. You know that annam, I know that annam is the very, very source of life. But I see that annam is also born from something else. It was not always there. I can see it coming up from the ground. What makes annam? I want to really look at that." Varuna was very happy that my son is on the right path. Then he told him, so this is how the steps go and so on. So the Upanishads actually give you the direct vidya. In Brahma Sutra, and I'm just telling you exactly what our acharyas have said, you don't get this basic vidya in Brahma Sutra. For doing the basic vidya, you have to study the Upanishads. Why? Because the Upanishad is nothing but a referencing of the various Upanishads. It doesn't explain the Upanishad. It just extracts the meaning of it and consolidates it. So this is one of the first things that Vyasacharya does. This is why if you have not studied many Upanishads, it won't strike you as clearly as you would have if you had studied the Upanishads. So this is why one of the prior requests for a condition, I say request, not a airtight condition, that you should have studied some Upanishad. Now, if you have not studied the Upanishads and all the Vedanta for a while, the result is one of two things. Okay? One of two unsatisfactory results will happen. And I just want to let you know that when you see that, you will see exactly what the reasons are. If you were to continue with this course, not a complete understanding of the Upanishads will result in two kinds of problems. One kind of problem is that this would appear to be dry logic which doesn't have any pull towards you. It's like two people arguing about the semantics, hair-splitting arguments, and would seem like boring to you. We'll try to make it not boring. In fact, Swami Paramarthananda's treatment of this has been phenomenal, so I'll try my best to not make it boring for you. But it has the potential, if you don't have the... it's something like if you are a high schooler and you are invited to a graduate level course in chemistry at Stanford or Berkeley or some of these higher institutions. And you are, this is what happens when you are entering college. Then you are invited to sit in and so on. So you can actually sit into these courses. Now, what is being discussed there is at a very high level where the professors and the graduate students, they are all in tune with what is being taught. And they all just say yes. There may be some questions from people. Sir, I don't understand this. So the teacher will explain and so on. Now imagine this high school student that doesn't have the background. Will he not be bored by this? They'll be fascinated. Oh, interesting. A lot of people are discussing. But what they're discussing, I don't understand. So this is one type of problem that may occur. Okay. The other type of problem that may occur is that if this background has not yet been established, then all these arguments and discussions and so on will seem to be academic, not life-changing. To the extent that the background has been built, to that extent you'll say, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. Why didn't I see this before?" If you don't have that background, then you will say, "Interesting." See, there's a difference between being bored. You will actually get the arguments, but it won't strike you as life-changing. It will seem to be just academic. Now, I'm just warning you, this is exactly what will happen. We all have aspirations that, I want to study Brahma Sutra and do this, that, or the other. But the knowledge requires, please understand this very clearly, the quality of knowledge is eligibility. If a person doesn't understand, doesn't mean that the knowledge is wrong. It's just that I'm not eligible to understand. That's what it is. Anyway, so I think I just want to go on. So the first three aspects of why Vyasacharya ji has in mind in composing this text. One is a compendium and a reference to all the Upanishads. This is number one. Number two, it is defending defending the basic teaching of Vedanta, of Vedas, from others who question the pramana of Vedas. Veda pramana. In fact, not only the others who question the Veda pramana, but also within some Vaidikas also. So here now, this is a Vedanta Sutra. It's not Vedika Sutra. This is Vedanta Sutra. And so within, and I'll go through this in more detail, so I won't spend much time here. So you're going to get pot shots from people who don't agree with you. Okay? And so the second reason for Brahma Sutra is to defend what you are saying. This is called defense. So in football or in soccer, each team has two roles. One is defense and the one is offense. And so in soccer, you have a goalkeeper and you have 3 or 4 people around the goalkeeper whose main job is nobody should score against us. That's their marching orders. Don't leave the goalpost. Stay there all the time. So they call defense. So the number 2 reasons for Brahma Sutra is the defense of Vedanta against other people who accuse Vedanta of not being truthful, not being effective. The third reason is, last one, so they say that, okay, so if the team has a defense, so it says, okay, we are very successful and we have not allowed the other team to score a goal against us. But I haven't scored a goal against somebody else. So you need an offense too. So the third reason is an offense, where Brahma Sutra says, now that you have raised this, you came to play with us. Now that you have raised an objection to this, not only have I answered you against the defense of my arguments, but in fact, let me tell you why your arguments do not hold water. This is offense. So this is the third reason for Brahma Sutra. I'll leave it at as that. I won't spend much more time on that. So here, Swami Paramarthananda was funny. He was saying, he raises a question and he answers it. He raises a question, he says, do I need Brahma Sutra for gaining moksha? Do I need it? And Swami Paramarthananda said, no, you don't need it. Then why am I studying it? Because my objective is to gain total freedom. And you're telling me that Brahma Sutra doesn't give me total freedom, then why am I studying it? So it means that you need it as to clarify your doubts that you should have clarified before. And if you haven't done so, here are some more arguments, more powerful arguments to enable you to gain moksha. So it's not as though somebody can just come into Brahma Sutra and say, okay, I want freedom, will it give it to me? No. It is very interesting. So there is a nyaya. There is a kind of like a rational. Nyaya means rational reasons. So there is a book of nyayas, and so there is one nyaya which is called Saptavada Nyaya. Saptavada Nyaya. So Saptavada Nyaya is an interesting one. So the story goes, so I illustrate that with the story. Story goes that there's a person who was very hungry. And he goes to this shop where they are selling dosas and idlis and vadas, and says, what do you have on your menu? So they said, sir, you got this, that or the other. So he says, what is this vada? I think he knew what the vada was. So he says, you have vadas? He says, yes sir, we have vadas. Will it appease my hunger? So the person said, it should appease your hunger. How much is it? He says, 1 rupee each for each vada. Okay, bring me a vada. So he brought a vada and he found that he was still very hungry. So he says, no, bring me another vada. After the second vada he also ate, he was still hungry. A little bit less, but still quite hungry. So he had 6 vadas. Then he asked for the 7th one. When he got the 7th vada, he ate it. This time he was tripta. He was he was no longer hungry. He just had a little glass of water. And he got up. And he took out his wallet. He took out 1 rupee and gave it to the server. So the server said, sir, it's not 1 rupee, you had 7 vadas, you need to give me 7 rupees. He says, no, because only the 7th vada was the one that appeased my hunger. So you told me that it is going to appease my hunger. I took your word for it. And I am just paying you 1 rupee for what you just told me. So the server said, please sir, thank you very much, leave, please leave. I cannot argue with that kind of an argument, there's nothing I can do. So in that sense, Brahma Sutra is the 7th vada. Now, it may give you moksha But only if you had 6 other Vadas before that, all the Upanishad study and Bhagavad Gita and all of those kinds of things. It won't give you by itself. So I thought I'd relate that story to you. Okay. So now let's go into more details. So in following through with the second and the third objectives, remember the first objective is a consolidation of all the Vedantic sayings. The second objective is to defend the Vedanta from onslaught of other schools of thought. So in Vedanta it is called darshana. So the word darshana means schools of thought, philosophies. And so philosophies means a viewpoint. And it is interesting, Swami Dayananda was he very specific about words. This is one thing I really enjoyed in the teaching of Swami Dayananda. Swami Chinmayananda also, but much more in Swami Dayananda's teaching, was the precise use of words. Do not use words in an exaggerated fashion. It should mean exactly what it means. I remember Swami Dayananda used to say that when he first came to this country in 75, and he started giving on the following the Jnana Yajnas of Swami Chinmayananda. He also started teaching and so on. And in fact, I was very lucky that I met him in the very first week of his visit to the US. So anyway, he had a satsang. And you know, at the end of the satsang, our Swamis, they all give some prasada to people. And so they have a basket full of fruits, and then they give it to everybody. And Swami Dayananda, of course, was very fond of throwing it to people when you catch it. And there was a fun. And so there was this child who came in, and Swamiji randomly gave him a banana. So the child said to him, "I hate bananas. I hate bananas." Swamiji said, "This was a revelation to me. This is the first time I heard the word hate connected to a fruit." You know, you can say, "I hate being put into that position," or something like that. But somehow that word, strong word, percolated down to the student of this child who said, "I hate bananas." Swamiji said, "You know, I had never heard the use of the word hate in connection with the fruit." This is a wrong usage of the word. We should choose words that are appropriate. You can say, "Not my favorite. I don't like the taste of it," or something like that you can say. And reserve this strong word for some hopefully unusual cases to do that. It was very precise. So the word darshana, going back to it, means philosophy. Philosophy actually now has become misused. It has the vyutpatti, the etymological meaning of philosophy from the Greek philo, is knowledge. But that's not how it is used now. So the word philosophy means a point of view. A point of view. Okay? So the word darshana is a point of view. Whereas, and this is also I just want to convey to you, I think I've already talked about that in my classes, but for some of the new people, Vedanta is not a philosophy. it's not a philosophy any more than if you are a philosophy. Are you a philosophy? Do you philosophize, do I exist or not? You can philosophize what my life is going to be. That's a different thing altogether. But the fact that you are is not a philosophy. It's knowledge. So Vedanta is not a philosophy. In fact, in all of the texts that Swami Dayanand has written, you'll never see the word philosophy associated with Vedanta. So this is the view. This is the real view. This is the content of the view. But the viewpoints are philosophy. If you look at it this way, it's a philosophy. But the view itself is not philosophy, it's knowledge. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. So, now, going back to Brahma Sutra, Vyasa defends this knowledge, which is Vedanta, from 12 different philosophies, 12 darshanas. Okay? So this is called 12 darshanas, which are quite famous and quite well accepted as different viewpoints. There are many others, but you're classifying them in 12 different parts. So these 12 darshanas can be further subdivided into astikas and nastikas. So astika and nastikas are as follows. Let's look at nastika. Nastika means na asti. Na asti. That Brahma does not exist. What Vedanta is saying is that there is an independent source of the whole world, which is called Brahman, and it is independent of time. And in fact, it is none other than you itself. But leaving aside that part for a minute, Brahman is. It's called Brahma Asti. And there are other people who say Brahman Nasti. It's not there. So those people are called Nastika. And those who accept that Brahman Asti are called Astika. Okay? And so here, one other interesting thing, as you know that we are, our understanding about the truth of things depends upon how the truth manifests itself. This is what is called pramana. Prama janakam pramanam. Prama means knowledge. So let's take a simple example. Then you say somebody, your friend was telling you, I went to that meeting, and so you can ask him, did you see my? So the friends have a mutual third person. So let's just take John and say, did you see John in that meeting? So the person said, no, he was not in the meeting. So he says, how do you know? So he says, because there's only like 20 people in the meeting, and I know John very well, he was not there. This is called pratyaksha pramana. So you accept it by knowing, or you yourself can say John is not here because you don't see him. So your eyes are, the eyes are a pramana for seeing things. And the eyes don't lie. They don't lie. They may have some limitations. Like, for example, supposing you have a very nice looking fruit sitting there, which looks like an apple, and you say, wow, what a nice apple. But when you touch it, you find it's a stone apple, not a real apple. So your eyes have some limitations, but otherwise it gives you a very accurate picture of whether the thing is there or not. This is called pramana. Pramajanakam pramana means the proof. Proof. This, in English it would be called proof. Your eyes see it, therefore it proves that it was there. So we will maybe study this some other time. There are 6 kinds of pramanas. One of them is called Shabda Pramana. So this pramana we will go into more detail, so I don't want to really give you a complete introduction to that. One is called Shabda Pramana. Shabda Pramana. Shabda Pramana means someone's words used in an intelligible sentence is called Shabda Pramana. How can that be a pramana? How can that be a pramana? Words used? Yes. Because sometimes if you cannot, supposing, I think this is a very common example one can give, that if somebody, you have a party, let's say you gave a party. These days parties are not there because of the COVID, but on days when we would have social get-together, you invite maybe 10 friends to come, and one of them brings a guest. One of your friends who comes in, he brings a guest that you don't know. And now the party started, you said, please come in, and you're serving drinks and hors d'oeuvres and so on. In the middle of the party, this person says, I would like to introduce my friend that I brought with me, and he is the Vice President of Belgium. And you say, what? Vice President of Belgium? This is a very important person. Why didn't you tell me that when you first came in? He says, no, you were busy and so on. Now just imagine, this is called Shabda Pramana. In the Shabda Pramana, so first of all, instead of going there, let me just finish the thought. So as soon as you recognize, you were told and you accept that this is the Vice President of Belgium. He says, I grew up in Belgium. You didn't know that, but you and I are colleagues at Hewlett-Packard and so on. And I'm from Belgium. And we grew up together, and my friend has now become the Vice President. He was visiting, so I thought I would bring it to you, to your place. So you say, oh my God. Oh, can I? Then you become extra careful about it because it's a very important person. Your whole attitude changes once you find out it's not just any ordinary guest. It's an important guest. So now it immediately creates a new identity for that person based on who? Based on a reliable person. This is what is called Apta Purushaha. So the Apta Purushaha is the one, because supposing you have a friend who is a jokester. He plays practical jokes all the time. He's a fun-loving person. He does this. And supposing he comes in and he says, I've got a friend who is the Vice President of Belgium. You're not sure whether he's joking or not. You see, this is an important thing to see. But if you have someone who does not give you these kinds of practical things, a very serious person, you have a lot of respect for your friend. If he says this is the Vice President of Belgium, you have no reason to doubt it. So this is what is called Shabda Pramana. So Shabda Pramana means one which is talked, which tells you exactly as it is, based on your trust that this is an intelligent source. The reason I brought all this up is that Vedanta is a Shabda Pramana. Why? How can we say that? Because it is not a jokester. It is not a philosophy. It is not a speculation. Philosophy means speculation. I think it must be like this. I believe this must be the Vice President. No, either he's a Vice President of Belgium or he's not. And either you know it or you don't. You cannot just take some any person and say he's the Vice President of Belgium. And so Vedanta, which says, hey, so in the Shabda Pramana works where? So let's look at that part of it. Shabda Pramana works when the entity that is being pointed out to you is within your purview. Isn't it? Because if you don't, so we can even go back to, I'll bring in some of the arguments, not just in Brahma Sutra, but just to support it and so on. So this is what is called, so there are three things involved as we interact with things in our life. One is called pratyaksha. So pratyaksha means right within my sense organs. Either I can hear it, or you can say, yes, was there music going on? Yes, I heard it. There was music in that room. Or eyes, or touch, or smell, or something like this. All of these is called pratyaksha pramana. Then there is paroksha. So this is pratyaksha vastu. Vastu means an entity, something. And then you have a paroksha vastu. Paroksha vastu means that somebody says, you know, there is fire in Santa Cruz Mountains. And they show that in the television that there is a fire. In fact, even now in these, I'm very happy that we now have rain, because some of the embers were still burning and they had erupted again in the nearby Santa Cruz Mountains from where I live. I can tell you that because we had to vacate our house back in the summertime when there was a huge fire. So that is called paroksha vastu. I don't see it. I'll leave aside the television part of it, but I've heard that there is a fire. It's called paroksha. Now you look at Atma, you yourself. So are you paroksha or pratyaksha? It is you. You are not paroksha. You can never be paroksha. You are always you. Wherever you are there. You can never be separate from where you are. It is not paroksha, very clear. Are you pratyaksha? Pratyaksha means that you must be an object of your sense organs. You must be able to see yourself, to hear yourself, to smell yourself, and to taste yourself. Well, you cannot see yourself. This is part of the problem. We are looking for things that I can see clearly. So there we say that Atma is neither Paroksha nor Pratyaksha, it is Aparoksha. Beautiful word used for Aparoksha means not Paroksha. You don't say I am Pratyaksha, but neither do you say I am Paroksha. I am not Paroksha. So this is the reason for using the word Aparoksha. Aparoksha Anubhuti. There is a text called Aparoksha Anubhuti. The experience of being Aparoksha. Right now I don't have the experience. I only have, in fact I have no experience whatsoever. We'll go into that separately. So, therefore, what I was saying, we can conclude that topic, that Shabda Pramana is only effective when the Vastu in question is close by. You cannot say there is a Vice President of Belgium, he might be coming here. That doesn't mean anything. But to say, you see this person who looks like an ordinary person, he's a very important person. It elevates the very nature of the person. So similarly, Vedanta says that, do you know who you are? You, which is not Paroksha and is not Pratyaksha. This introduction, which changes your experience completely, just like you change the experience of the Vice President of Belgium, is done from Shabda Pramana. And how will we use Shabda Pramana? Shabda Pramana is only used when I have complete trust in who is telling me that. You see, this is important. It should not be a philosophy, it should not be a speculative, but one person who knows. This is why I was talking about Swami Dayanandaji's use of that. It is not philosophy, it is knowledge. Anyway, having given you that background, and I need to leave some time for questions, so last time I think I overdid it. I'll have to just let me wrap it up, this part of it, and then we will continue next class. So given that Vedanta is a Shabda Pramana, lots of people says, how do we know? So they don't even know, they do not analyze the effectiveness of Shabda Pramana. And furthermore, they say, okay, that may be Shabda Pramana, but what is the authenticity of the person who's saying that? So in Vedanta we say, Veda is the Pramana. Others will say, how do we know Veda is Pramana? So, the 12 darshanas that we are going to very quickly go over in the next class are classified into Nastika and Astika. Nastika do not accept Vedas to be a Shabda Pramana. You see? Now we can close the loop on this. They don't accept the Vedas to be a Shabda Pramana. They say we don't accept it. We have our own view of it, even though it's a philosophy, but we believe in our philosophy rather than what they considered Vedas to be a philosophy, which it is not. So this is what is called Nastika. Now, a more interesting thing is, so there are 6 of them. We have classified them in 12 into 2 parts. 6 of them are Nastikas. The more interesting one is the Astikas. The Astikas do accept Vedas as a pramana, but there are differences in their interpretation of Veda as a pramana. So here the example of the vice president of Belgium doesn't apply, because either you know it or you don't. But in this case, the Astikas have various understanding of what the Veda pramana is. So that one becomes more convoluted, more complex. So we will go into that to a small degree. Obviously, we cannot go into this because still this is an introduction to the Brahma Sutra, and so I cannot spend so much time on the introduction itself, but I'll give you some idea of what the complexity of the Astikas is. What are the different Astikas? So in the next class, I will talk about what the different Nastikas are and what are the Astikas, and then we will begin anyway, we'll continue to look into that aspect of it. So let us finish the chanting, and then I will open up for any questions that you may have. So let's chant the last 5 verses of Dakshinamurti Stotra, and then the remaining part of the Dhyana Shlokas, which says Ashubhani Nirachaste. So let's do that. Rahu Grasta Divankarendu Sadrisho Maya Samachadinat Sanmatra Karanopasamharanato Yo Bhut Sushuptaf Puman Pragaswapsamiti Prabodha Samaye Yaf Pratyabhigyayate Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Balyadishvapi Chakradadishu Tata Sarvasvavasthasvapi Vyavrittasvanuvartamanamahamittyantaspurantam Sada Swatmanam Prakati Karoti Bhajatam Yo Mudraya Bhadraya Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Vishvam Pashyati Karyakarnataya Swaswami Sambanditaha Shishyacharya Tathaiva Pitraputradhyatmana Bhedataha Swapne Jagrati Vaya Esha Purusho Maya Paribramitaha Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Bhurambhamsya Nalo Nilo Ambar Maharnartho Himam Shufpuman Ityabhati Chara Charatmakamidam Yasyaiva Murtyashtakam Nanyat Kinchina Vidyate Vimrishatam Yasmat Parasmat Vibhoho Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Sarvatmatvamiti Sputikritamidam Yasmatamushminstave Tenasya Shravanat Dattamananat Dhyanat Sankirtanat Sarvatmatvamaha Vibhuti Sahitam Syadishwaratvam Swataha Siddhye Tat Punarashtada Parinatam Chaishwaryam Avyahatam Ashubhani Nirachaste Tanoti Shubhasantatim Smriti Matrena Yatpumsam Brahmatan Mangalam Param Ati Kalyana Rupatvat Nitya Kalyana Samshrayat Smartranam Varadat Tvacha Brahma Tanmangalam Viduhu Omkaraschath Shabdascha Dvavetau Brahmanah Pura Kantham Bhitva Viniryatau Tasmat Mangilakau Vubhau Om Matha Om Matha Om Matha Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Namurtaye Puram. Good. Nice to see you all. So Ganeshan has a question. Is the Atma Kripa here means Jivatma Kripa? Yes, I would say that's a good way to put it. So Atma Kripa here means Mana Kripa. So many times the manas, the mind, is taken to be the Atma, and appropriately so, because the Manaha is very close to the Atma. It is actually accurately reflects, I won't say accurately, but it reflects the Atma. It reflects your understanding of who you are. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, this is what I want to do, this is what I know, do I like this one, I don't like. So this is all I, and with some gunas. So this is what a mind is. So that mind also is evaluating itself. Who am I? And so the Vijnana and Jnanam, both of them together, they decide who you are, what are you doing, is this an accurate description, etc. All of those kinds of things it is evaluating all the time. And here they are misinformed, because they look for Atma as also another object. And so, this is I think really a very good, this is not a class in Vidya, I'm just giving you as an answer to this question. I think a very good way of describing the distinction between Atma and Anatma, Jiva, that I am, is the example of the electricity and the appliance. I think it's a beautiful modern way of looking at this distinction between them. And so an electricity that doesn't understand the purity of itself sees itself mixed up in the expression within an appliance. It enjoys himself or herself as the expression in the appliance. So let's say there is an air conditioner, and actually air conditioner is a better example in the summertime. Let's say you have a heater in the winter time, and so the appliance called a heater, which is really doing some very nice function and also can break down, it can be moved, all those kinds of things, is a mixture of the electricity and the appliance. The electricity is Chaitana in that sense, and the appliance is Jada, inert. But this combination, which we are going to actually talk about in the next class very soon, is taken to be a single one. And it says, I'm doing well, I'm working, I'm functioning well, I'm able to heat this room, all these kinds of things. This is the Jivatma. This is the evaluation. But it doesn't see itself that I am really the electricity, not the mixed up electricity with the appliance. So it says that I'm going to also go off one of these days. In that example, the electricity doesn't go off. It just is there all the time. And so in that sense, yes, the Atma Kripa means the Atma which is mixed up in the appliance, the electricity which is mixed up in the appliance, being told, listen, you are not ever going to go off. You are independent of the switch. If the switch is turned off, then the appliance is turned off, but the electricity is still there. And so this is the Atma Kripa. And you have to think about it, because right now you're so mixed up between the electricity and the appliance that you cannot distinguish between them. But once this is given, then the Atma Kripa can come in. So something like that. Yeah. All right, good. I don't see any other questions. So I will wind up this class and look forward to seeing you again next week. Om